see. All right, we've got some people rolling in. We're probably just going to give it about like 1 minute for everybody to hop on, and then we're just going to dive right into today's session. So just sit tight for just 1 minute. I cannot believe Thanksgiving is next week. I don't know about anyone else, but that is crazy. Oh, you're on mute, Zach.
We're entering the crazy season.
I know.
Pumpkin flavored everything.
Oh, that's been going on for like a month at this point.
Joy,
but I am indulging.
Family, stress. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Happy Friday. Welcome to StackHawk Office Hours. My name's Nicole Jones. I am a marketing manager here. But more importantly, who I have with me today is Senior Software Engineer Brandon Ward, Senior Product Manager Brian Erickson, who both of them you may remember from last week's webinar if you attended. They're the duo who led the GitHub pull request checks feature, which is the topic of today. And we also are super lucky to have our incredible solutions architects, Zachary Conger and Eric Potter, with us as well. If you're a StackHawk user, you've probably had the pleasure of interacting with them. And if not, it's something to look forward to. But today, so our topic is GitHub pull request checks. Hopefully you joined the webinar last week or have seen some of the social posts, blogs, docs that we've been circulating around. But if not, that is okay, because we're going to bring everybody up to speed and do a little refresher by having Brandon jump right into a demo. So we're going to skip all the slides and whatnot, and Brandon's going to kick it off with a demo of the feature for us. But before that, I just want to encourage everyone to please ask questions. Like, this is your time to ask really anything. The topic is pull request checks, but if you have questions about StackHawk in general, please go ahead and drop those in as well. You kind of have the dream team here at your disposal. So yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and jump into Brandon's demo.
Sweet. Thanks, Nicole. Let me share my screen, get this rolling. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Sweet. So just a quick refresher. We're going to be demoing off the GitHub pull request checks today. So to do that, you have to have the StackHawk integration installed with a repository mapped to your application under scan. In my application under scan, I'm using GitHub Actions for my CI/CD. So I have to provide just a couple of variable mappings so I can pull the commit SHA and the branch name out of GitHub and then feed it to StackHawk. And then my StackHawk YAML is picking up on those values in the places we need for the commit SHA and branch name to get to us. So in my Java Spring Vulny, I've got just a pull request ready to go, complete with some PR checks. So as you can see right now, it's telling us that our check has failed because there's a high finding, and we can drill into the vulnerability details and see that this particular high finding is a SQL injection bug. So you have links from these pull request checks and comments directly back into the StackHawk platform. You also get it right here on the commit status. So let's go figure out what's going on with this. So I open up the scan from the pull request comment. I can drill into this SQL injection, You'll see another GitHub feature we have, which is an integration with CodeQL, which gives us some information about this vulnerability as well, where GitHub found this in the source code. So using StackHawk and using GitHub CodeQL, we can see that StackHawk found it on the search path. GitHub CodeQL saw some code smells in both the user service and the search service. Now, since StackHawk found it on the search path, we have a pretty good indication that it's going to be in this search service. So if I pull this up, it's telling us that right here on line 39, we've got just an unsanitized query from user input. So if we jump back over to the code, jump into line 39, you can see here's our query. Here's our unsanitized query directly built from user input. So that's not the best. We definitely want to fix that. So we've got a pre-prepared code snippet that gets us right where we need to be. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these around. And now, before I commit this, since we want to know we actually fixed this, I'm going to go ahead and restart my app to pick up the changes and then use another feature that StackHawk recently introduced, which is this rescan feature. So we think we fixed our SQL injection, but before we check it in, we want to test it and make sure we actually did. So I'll click this, I'll get the command that I need. And then before I can run that, I just need to pass it the same config files that my CI environment was using. So I'll go ahead and do that, double check that this is up. I think we're good to go. So I'll kick off this rescan. And so what the rescan is going to do is it's going to do a limited plugin set of the Hawk scan. And it's only going to rerun the plugins that previously had alerts. So if I come back over here and I look at the plugin summary, you can see here there's a lot of things that ran. But then when we jump into our rescan, there'll be a lot less because we only had 5 plugins that created alerts. So the rescan should just run those 5, so it should be a lot quicker of a scan. This first scan took about 9 minutes. We can see our rescan right here with this little refresh icon. So that's how we know it's our rescan. And the plugin list here, like I was mentioning, will be a lot smaller because we're just going to retest what we need to. So this should be pretty close to wrapping up. And then we can see what we found.
Hey, Brandon, how did you configure the GitHub integration inside of StackHawk to know like which application to associate the code with?
Yeah, so after you install the GitHub app, you'll land on this page and you won't have any connected repositories. So if you click add, we'll pull the list of all of the repositories that we can see from your org. So you can then pick your repository and then map it to an application. And then that's how we know which repository maps to which StackHawk application. Good question, Brian. So this looks like it's done. You can see that we've finished here as well. And then right away in the StackHawk platform, you'll notice that the findings that were fixed from the previous scan is in fact that SQL injection. So that's what we wanted to see. So we know we're good to commit it. So at this point, we can check in our change. And then that will trigger our CI/CD environment again to pick up our fix, rerun the scan, etc. And we're not going to wait for that here. I'm just going to I have a pre-canned PR from the last time. So after we fix that security vulnerability, you'll see that this time the HawkScan commit status will be green because we aren't tripping our failure threshold. And then the findings comment, the PR comment will show you that indeed there is no high vulnerability and we'd be then allowed to merge. One last thing I want to show, the piece that's tripping the high findings threshold is this Hawk failure threshold. So you can pick high, medium, and low. And then if we find any vulnerabilities at or above your failure threshold, that will cause the failure threshold comment and failing commit status. And that's all I've got. I'm going to stop my screen share for now, and then we'll move on to the next segment.
Sorry, one sec. I'm trying to get Zach access to chat with everybody.
Hey, Brandon, I think we answered this in the webinar, but just to ask it again, you are running your demo there with GitHub Actions. If we wanted to kick off the scan with a different CI provider, that's something we can do, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me pull up the docs that we just refreshed. Give me one sec. And then I can show this as well, which will be good to see. Take back the screen share. All right. Can you guys see the docs page? So as Brian was referring to, this will work with any CI/CD provider. So the big piece that makes this tick are those scan tags. And so we broke down a couple of popular CI/CD providers and how you would get them to work. So this is that same GitHub Actions configuration example that I was just going through in the demo. We've got one for Jenkins and we've got another for Circle CI. But then the big thing with these CI/CD providers is there's basically two steps. So you have to get those variables as environment variables for StackHawk to be able to pick them up. There are a lot of CI/CD providers that already provide these values as environment variables, and so you may not need to do that step. GitHub Actions is weird in that the values come off of their event payload, and so you have to do an extra step to stuff that data into the environment. And then once it's in the environment, you can just use it directly in your StackHawk YAML. But in that way, these tags should work with any provider.
Brandon, did you show how the StackHawk itself shows up as a PR check, as like an official PR check? Because that's one of the features of this that I really appreciate, that you can tell at a glance that it was, if HawkScan does break your build because it found a new high severity issue, for instance, it's really obvious where to go from here. It just shows up as a check that you can hit the details onto CR platform.
Yep. So these are those checks that you were referring to. And yep, we show them here at the bottom of a pull request so that you can see right now it looks like the scan has started. So this details link gets you right back into the platform so you can watch the scan. The results are updated here as well, so you can know right away at a glance how your scan went. And then another cool thing is on your repo, those commit statuses also pop up on the landing page. And so even if you're not using the pull request comments and you just want the commit statuses, you still get a quick overview on whether or not your scan passed. And so you can maintain your application health.
It's really nice. Yeah, from time to time. So Eric and I talk to a lot of, folks who are looking at our product, trying to help them understand how it can fit into their environment. One thing that I've heard a lot is that, people are wary of bringing on new tools that require developers to bounce out to the platform of some other tool that they need to enroll in and stuff. And And this, by and large, like reduces that touch point directly with our platform, because mostly they're going to see all the information they need right in GitHub, where they are already, of course. To me, that's a pretty powerful feature. Simplifies everybody's life.
Yeah, and it helps bring it to your attention without needing to look for it. Because then if something does pop up that needs a deeper dive, all the tools that you need to triage it are in the StackHawk platform, but knowing when to look in the platform is the bigger win here.
Brandon, I'm not sure if you went over this, but did you show us, I know something that we get asked a lot is if there's a way to like report or fail the CI/CD if higher vulnerabilities are found. Did you cover that?
Yeah, it's that Hawk failure threshold. So let me pull that back up. So this configuration does a couple of things. So this will cause the scanner itself to throw an error if there's a finding at or above that level. And then it will also trigger the pull request comment to tell you that we found a finding above your threshold. So what that looks like in here, you'll notice we actually got 2 failures. So the build test scan task failed because the scanner throws that non-zero exit code at the end of the scan, but then also the commit status coming from the GitHub plugin, our GitHub integration also failed because there were findings over a threshold. So that's kind of the 2 ways that that configuration manifests itself.
Does that cute little GIF come up every time?
No, the GIF I just put for all your PRs need a GIF. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not a PR without a GIF. By the way, we got a great question from anonymous attendee. Says, hello, does the GitHub CI/CD actions vulnerability test, is it functional for any programming language? Does the scanner work in any programming language? And the answer is yes, it works for any language. It's totally language agnostic. All you really need is the running application that you want to test, and it should be listening on HTTP or HTTPS. And then the scanner is actually attacking that application directly. So, and there's a bunch of configuration in StackHawk that you can use to get really deep into that application. So in a lot of cases, we're testing APIs, and we've got a ton of features to explore the API, discover the full depth of it, authenticate to it, and so forth. Great question.
And that could be a good segue into the vulnerability tutorial that we're rolling out, because the repo that I was using for this demo is the same repo that our tutorial is built off of. And there's a ton of examples of how to configure that scanner in the repo. So you'll notice when I did the rescan command, I pulled 2 specific config files, but the folder that I'm pulling those from has like 10 or 12 different ways to configure the scanner just for that one app, just to give you an idea of all the things that are possible.
Yeah, anybody who joined our webinar last week, you probably heard us plug at the end this, what's the correct word, Brian, for the tutorial, the name? Java.
I think we just call it the Java Spring Vulny tutorial.
Yes, the Java Spring
guide tutorial, but I think we went back to the simple.
Yeah, we've been playing around with some names, but all you need to know is it is a end-to-end tutorial that can get you up and running without using your own tech, your own app, which is a great way to basically give yourself like a guided demo. And this pull request checks feature that we're talking about, you can also leverage with following this tutorial on a trial StackHawk account. So I don't know, Brian, are you ready? Do you want to jump into just kind of going over what that guide's like?
Yeah, sure. I can just kind of give a little bit. So just to reiterate, the guide is really trying to help you get from essentially 0 to scanning with our sample Volney app in GitHub using GitHub Actions, GitHub CodeQL, and the PR checks. So some of what Brandon showed assumes that you've already created a StackHawk account, and the guide is a little bit more helping from the very beginning. So I'll go ahead and share just the docs. In our documentation site, and we'll put a link to this guide in the notes, but you can always just go to StackHawk, docs.stackhawk.com, and under getting started, you'll see the Java Spring Volney tutorial. And that's going to kind of walk you through what you need to begin. So you'll obviously need a StackHawk account. And as we mentioned in the GitHub webinar, anyone can create a StackHawk account with a free 14-day trial. That's a trial of our enterprise plan for that 14 days. And this GitHub, all the stuff we've been talking about here with the GitHub PR checks and everything is available on our Pro and Enterprise plans. So then you also need a GitHub account. If you don't have one, it's free to set up, really easy to get going with that. And you'll obviously need some browser to be able to see the docs and use our site. So I won't dive into each of the steps here, but just to kind of iterate, there's kind of 9 sort of things that you need to do. You'll need an API key, which our application will walk you through as you're making your account. You'll need to fork the Java Spring Volney project, which is a public project that we maintain to help kind of illustrate some common security vulnerabilities in a Java Spring application. Then you'll need to set up your GitHub API key as a repository secret, and and each of these has screenshots and everything to walk you through that. Then you'll need to set up the StackHawk side, get your GitHub Actions workflow going, which we have an example action YAML, and add that to your project. And then it's as simple as opening a pull request on your forked repo and triggering the HawkScan test to run and then viewing your results. And so really a great way if you're kind of not quite ready to put this into your own environment, or you don't have an app that you're ready to test against, this will walk you through the whole step from beginning to end. So give it a try.
Yeah, we'll follow up with an email, including a link to this spot in the docs, so you can give it a try. And I just want to reiterate that one of the coolest things about that tutorial is it really gives you like the whole picture of how this could function. Like it's setting you up to run StackHawk and CI/CD using GitHub Actions, but that could apply to any CI/CD provider. It's integrating with CodeQL, a SaaS tool. So that's showing you like the power of using StackHawk, a dynamic application security testing tool, combined with a static application security tool. So I mean, honestly, even if I don't know if this is possible, Brian, but like, even if you are a StackHawk user and you haven't taken advantage of those aspects, like integrating with CI/CD or combining it with a SaaS provider, that's another way that you can just try it out, see if it's a good fit for you, see how it works for you. I think that could happen, right? Like anybody could use it, even if they are a StackHawk user already.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you already have something going on in StackHawk scanning your applications and you want to kind of try this alongside that tutorial will kind of walk you through some of those steps as well. But really all you need to do is create a new application inside of StackHawk. And we don't limit the number of applications that you can have. So there's no reason why you couldn't just try this just to see kind of, and maybe take some of those aspects and use them in your own app when you're ready.
Totally.
This is really great because automated security testing has become a fairly popular thing in some ways. So there's a lot of dependency checkers out there like Dependabot in GitHub that can like check for bad dependencies that you should update. And there's better and better tooling lately with SAST utilities, which are code scanners. They're looking for vulnerable patterns. As you put it, Brandon, code smells. I love that term. But DAST has been something that has been notably missing from that easy automation process that's been going on, the evolution that's been going on. And a lot of people are sort of daunted by the fact that they would need to bring up the application and make it available for testing in the build pipeline in order to really automate this. And we've done everything we can to make it as easy as possible. And this tutorial helps you see, just by doing it yourself, how straightforward it can be, really. And obviously, it can get as complicated as you want, but to get started is really not as hard or scary as I think some people assume when they look at this. So that's a really nice tutorial.
Yeah. Okay, let's address some questions in the Q&A. Let me see. I'll try to ask them the best I can. From anonymous attendee, can you adjust the StackHawk GitHub CI/CD actions programming code in order to best fit the application project?
So I think I know what they're asking for on that one. Let me share my screen again really quickly. So on any application in StackHawk, you can give us some details about the application so that we will tailor the scan to better fit that application. So this improves scan times and makes sure that we're only looking for things that would be in the application. So to tweak that, you go into your application settings and you come into this tech flags area. So you can see on the app that I was just demoing, I slimmed down some of the technologies. So I know I'm only using a Postgres database. So I turned off all the other databases. And I know it's a Java Spring app. I'm only running it on Linux. I use Git and it's running on an Apache server. So I turned off a lot of things I'm not using just to help the scan better know what to attack in the application. Does that answer that question?
You might also mention just how configurable our YAML configuration for the application is. So we're able to adapt to any sort of authentication scheme. You can configure include paths and exclude paths. So a lot of configurability there to match how your application works.
Yeah, this is just a quick glance at our HawkScan configuration docs. As you can see, there's a lot of levers to pull. So there's a lot of ways that you can help us understand your app to make the scan more valuable for you.
All right, Brandon, you did a great job with that one. Do you want to take a stab at the next two questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, let's see. So the next question is asking, does our actions, is it up to date or upgrade?
I think the question here is how hard or easy is it to make sure that you've always got the latest vulnerability scans in StackHawk, so that you're always up to date with the scanner, so you're always using the latest tests for your application.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, so that is actually baked in to a couple of ways that we ship the scanner. So for this particular example, we actually have this HawkScan GitHub Actions, which under the covers is always pulling the latest version of the scanner. For other CI/CD environments, we also have a Docker container. And so if you just pull the latest version of our HawkScan Docker container, this StackHawk HawkScan Docker container is bundled with our scanning engine, all of the rules that we're testing against, and we keep the latest one up to date with whatever the current version of our CLI is. And so for CI/CD, we recommend just using this latest tag of our scanner, and that will make sure that your scans are always up to date.
And did you show, sorry, if you already showed this, Brandon, but the rescan, I feel like that could kind of, I don't know, segue into that. That's such a cool feature that we can leverage, like with this pull request checks and just cutting that feedback loop even shorter.
Yeah, so the rescan is a newer feature that we are really intending for local use. So that's where having our Hawk CLI installed locally works out really well. Because the idea behind it is that a way, as you're developing your code and iterating on it, if you're working on some of these high findings, you can rescan wherever that finding was first found and know you fixed it before you commit and have to wait for the longer CI/CD cycle. So an example of that is this rescan took less than 2 minutes, and scanning the entire application took about 7 minutes. And so it's just another tool in the toolbox to help you iterate faster and test your software earlier.
Yeah, that's got to reduce quite a bit of time if you can just rescan exactly, what was flagged instead of sending it back to CI/CD to scan, the whole application all over again.
Yeah, and just to show that rescan only ran these 3 tests, since those were the tests that alerted on the scan before. But then when we committed to CI/CD, we rerun all of the tests. So we ran a lot more, just to show how pointed, I guess, or how specific the rescan is and why it's important.
Great. We've got another really good question out here. Let's see. Does the StackHawk GitHub CI/CD Actions vulnerability test allow you to generate an audit report that can be read by humans? I feel like there's actually a bunch of great questions wrapped up into that one. One of them, I think, the one that immediately comes to mind is how do you report on all of the vulnerabilities that the scanner found? And, for one, we do have some built-in reporting that you can look at a scan level, at an individual scan level, get a really detailed printable report. You can get a similar report for across the entire organization. Yeah, show us one of the scan reports.
Yeah, and you can keep talking and I can pull this
Sure.
up while you're going.
Yeah, I think you're about to pull up the single scan report. So this is great. It's got all the details of here's a snapshot of your latest findings. And then here are all of the details for each one of those findings. So for the CSP header not set, we've got the full details, what that's about, what paths that was found on, and so forth. And then we've got an org level report that shows the same, almost the same level of detail, although we don't go into each and every finding, but we're showing you a summary across all of the applications that you've got across your organization. So that's super useful, tends to be useful for a broad, here's the latest state of our security across the organization.
Yeah, and for this org, I have 2 apps under scan, so you can see high-level summaries of both. You can see when the last time we scanned it, how long it's generally taking, and what we're finding.
Yeah. But then for power users, we've got a full API that gives you access to all of the scan results across all of your applications. And you can create really detailed reports, really customized reports, just for the apps that you're interested in and the environments that you're interested in. And our API documentation is so cool because you can go in here and authenticate and then try out the API and grab chunks of data that you might include into reporting. for yourself. So it makes it kind of fun actually to work with our API.
Yeah, and then just to add on to that, the API lets you really dig into those scan results in case you want to do anything more advanced with your scan data.
You know, for the PR checks and the PR scan comments, we're making use of scan tagging. So we're inserting arbitrary tags into the scans, and those get surfaced through this API as well. So if there are ways that you want to label scans or applications, you can do that and make use of that in reporting from here.
Yeah, I was trying to see if this showed an example response. I may just not see it off the top of my head, but those scan tags that you add, they are arbitrary, and there's a couple special ones that we use for the GitHub PR checks, but you can add any tags like Zach was referring to, and you'll be able to pull them in the API here.
We also
I'd have to try it to get the response, but
yeah. Another question that is sort of wrapped up into this question is, what about auditing events in the system? Like, how have people triaged things? How have what scans have run? What were some actions people did? When did people? Who's been invited to the platform and when, and who did that? We do have some audit logging around that, and so you can see it here. Just a little bit of extra detail that you can grab. One reason people might want that information is to sort of check in on how people have been triaging. And so from the applications page is a really great place to do this. So from the applications page, as you see under Java Spring Bully here, there's this graph that shows you what your results look like over time. And so you can see at a glance that over time, as we scan, you know, we've not really been fixing a lot of vulnerabilities. Do you have any triaged issues in here?
I can make a couple really quick.
One of the things that can happen is that people are triaging issues as you go. They might mark them as false positives or risk accepted, or they might assign them to tickets in Jira. And so a security pro might want, you know, an AppSec person might want to review how people are triaging, and we make it really easy to do that. So you go to the applications page, you take a look at your apps, you find one that you want to zoom in on. You can go to the latest scan results for that, and then from here, you can see exactly how people have been triaging by checking the activity pane.
And then, yeah, that summary of what you've been doing shows up right here. So you can see something's been assigned, something's been risk accepted, and something's been false positive. You can drill back into that scan, and then we can see that all of those things were done on this cookie without same site. And then, yeah, you can drill all the way in and figure out which paths were marked what.
Yeah. So click on one of those that has been accepted or assigned, yeah. And then you can see from the activity pane who did that. So if you're an AppSec engineer and you're reviewing and you have questions about this, you could go talk to Brandon and say, you know, ask how they've assigned it, what work has been done, maybe help Brandon understand the priority, the importance of this bug, and whether or not they should be working on it or you know, calling it a critical issue.
Yeah. And for any devs on the call, when you actually go to work this security vulnerability, something I love is this validate functionality. So it will print the curl so that as you're working on this locally, you can reproduce the issue right there. So it's super cool. And then, yeah, this shows you what to look for. So we're not doing the right things with our set cookie response header.
Hey, Brandon, I think that kind of segues into a question that we've been asked by Mohammed and was just popped up again in the Q&A, specifically about what are the skills needed to run the HawkScan vulnerability test, or skills needed for this kind of activity. And that's a really great question, because traditionally running a vulnerability test or like any kind of a pen test required quite a bit of sophistication in terms of understanding security and how to attack the application platform. And we've really designed HawkScan to kind of abstract away a lot of that security sophistication. Though, in fact, we've designed it to be very, very usable by a developer or DevOps engineer who does not have a lot of security background. And so if you have some intelligence about your application and you can write a little bit of YAML, then you can run the HawkScan scanner. And then we have the tools that Brandon's been showcasing in the platform to help even the security neophyte understand those findings and kind of understand how they fit into the application ecosystem and which ones are important and which ones need to be addressed from a fix now kind of perspective. So skills really needed are an understanding of the application under test and an ability to write some YAML. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate that idea that we're also providing a lot of information about how to fix those issues for the developers who maybe aren't as familiar with some of these security toolings. They can still come into the platform, see what the issue is, reproduce it locally, and get some tips on, depending on what language they're using or what the issue is, how to actually fix that issue so that that deep level of security and scanning and security testing knowledge isn't necessarily needed, because StackHawk helps with all that.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's great because HawkScan makes it so that the only thing I really need to know is I need to understand my application, because I use that knowledge to tell HawkScan about it. And then after that, our scanner does the rest. So it's super cool.
Yeah, and it helps address a problem that a lot of companies have where they've got maybe a couple of AppSec engineers, but a whole lot of developers. And so if you can put this into the hands of developers so that they can not only find these vulnerabilities themselves, especially in an automated way, but fix them before they ever get anywhere near production, it really is to the benefit of everybody. And then developers like that, because they know that at the end of the day, they're on the hook for these security vulnerabilities anyway. So at the end of the day, whether they fix it now or fix it later, they're going to have to fix it. And it's so much easier to fix it when you've just written a couple lines of code and then something tells you, hey, you've got a bug. But then we also provide a bunch of tools for AppSec engineers to be able to audit that and review it and make sure everything's humming smoothly.
Great. So there's another great question in the Q&A from Anonymous. Specifically, can we apply the StackHawk? I think you mean basically the vulnerability scanning action test into any frameworks in different environments. And so maybe we can kind of unpack this into two different questions. Number one, the general purpose HawkScan vulnerability test scanner can be automated in any CI pipeline or environment that we know of. We package the scanner as an ephemeral Docker container specifically so that it can be automated in any environment that supports Docker. And so whether that's specifically GitHub, as we've kind of been showing today, or Azure, the DevOps, or Bitbucket pipelines, or Circle CI, or any of the common CI environments, we can automate the scanner in those environments. And then maybe the sub question is whether or not we can use that specific GitHub CI/CD actions within different environments besides GitHub. And Brandon kind of talked to that a little bit. So there is some capability there to pull tags from different environments, depending on how those environments treat that Git data, whether it's already pre-populated as an environment variable, or you have to do a little setup to kind of make it work.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there were two different GitHub things I was demoing during that demo. So one of them was our GitHub Actions plugin, which is basically a pre-canned runner for the scanner in GitHub Actions, which is their CI/CD environment. And then the PR decorations and commit statuses and code QL data all comes from our StackHawk GitHub app. So the app works regardless of whether you're using GitHub Actions. The only requirement for that app is that your code is hosted on GitHub. And then the runner obviously is just to help make GitHub Actions easier to use if that's your CI/CD provider.
And I think there's a kind of a follow-on to this, which is, can it be run, can the StackHawk test scanner be run in an environment like a local environment? And the answer is most definitely yes. And that's a great way, like Brandon showed in his demo. If an issue is found as the CI is running, the developer can come back to their local machine where they may have the application running and run the scan directly there, whether it's the full scan across the entire application or a targeted scan to just do a retest of the things that were found in that last scan. And we just introduced some additional support for Windows environments, so you'll be able to use this in any development environment that your team is using.
Also Kubernetes. We do have some customers who run the scanner as a job in Kubernetes or in ECS, Elastic Container Service. I think that's what it's called, the AWS older container orchestration engine. It's another great way to go. So some folks will integrate that into a deployment technology so that as an app moves from one environment to another on its way up to production, you can grab a scan real quick to make sure nothing has crept in.
Yeah, that's a great answer there, Zach. And it kind of leads into the next question that we have in the Q&A, which is, does the StackHawk vulnerability test, is it eligible or can it be run synchronized in Ansible? Since Ansible is essentially an automation framework that gets run on servers, the short answer is yes, because our scanner can be packaged and run on demand, either as a Docker container or as a CLI, like terminal commands. And either of those can be automated on your server stack using Ansible.
Great questions. Nicole.
I think I
got the notification. Now it's on mute. Were you going to say something, Brian?
Oh, I think one of the kind of questions that we addressed in the webinar was, if I don't use GitHub specifically, can I make use of any of these, things that we've shown today? And Brandon, I don't know if you want to just show that really quick, how you might take advantage of it.
Yeah, that was a good call out. So those scan tags, specifically the commit SHA and the branch, they also show up in the StackHawk platform to help you tie back where the scan came from and like what the state of your application was when you were scanning. So even if you're not using GitHub and you're using some other Git-based source control, we still recommend that you include those tags and configure them for your scan. So that way, when you're looking at the scan, you can clearly see which branch was scanned and the commit status or the commit SHA, so that at any point in time, you can just go back. And I know I'm on the PR here, but I'm pretty sure if I just search that commit SHA, yeah, GitHub right away could tie me back straight to where that source came from. and it knew when I plugged in that commit SHA that this is where the scan came from. So it's just good breadcrumbs to help you tie everything together and keep track of your scans as they happen.
I love that. Breadcrumbs. Great way to put it.
Great Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Thanksgiving.
Breadcrumbs to get back to your code smells.
Yeah. You guys are
All we're
giving
missing.
so many ideas.
Starting to get hungry.
Yeah.
Now, how do we work pumpkin spice into this equation?
Yeah, that's what I was
Or
thinking.
missing. All right, well, we've got just a little bit of time left. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in, but unless you guys have anything else that you want to go over, I'm going to do some shameless plugs real quick. Nothing else? All right. So just a couple other things to expect or that we have coming up. So following this session, we'll send you another email with some recordings and instructions on how to get swag. We had a question early in the session to review those instructions on how you can get swag. So for the time being, we're offering anybody who's basically, you can be a non-StackHawk user and sign up for a trial account, or you can be a current StackHawk user and install the GitHub app, and then just fill out a survey giving us some feedback. And then we'll give you some swag. It's a full swag pack. It's awesome. We have great swag. It's honestly something that we're known for. So if you want comfy, cool t-shirts, it's super easy. You can follow the tutorial that Brian mentioned and install it on a trial account. And as long as you give us that feedback, you'll still get that swag pack. So that's how you can score some swag. Another way to also score some swag and just get in touch with us is we will be at reInvent in, gosh, what is it? Just over a week, almost 2 weeks, basically.
Yep.
Coming up quick. So we will be at reInvent. You can come see us. I believe our booth number is 131. Yep, we'll be at booth 131 in the expo hall at reInvent. And we're also hosting a really fun, really cool happy hour with Sneak. And I will also include a link to RSVP to that in the follow-up. So come, if you're attending reInvent, you can get on the list, come hang out, have some really fun themed cocktails, and just chat with us about your security needs and desires, dreams, goals, whatever. And we'll also have plenty of people there if you want to book a personal meeting or just have kind of a one-to-one conversation. That's available as well. So those are some ways that you can get some swag, get in touch with us, and learn more about these features. That's all from me. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Give it a shot. I mean, you can sign up for an account, and when you sign up and log in for the first time, we'll walk you through setting up your first application. You could do that with the tutorial app if you want. It's a great way to get introduced to the product.
Absolutely.
I think there was one last question on the swag kit asking if it included the shipping fee. I think that is baked in, right?
It's baked in. We do have some restrictions on where we ship to, but you'll, as soon as you click the survey link that I'll include in the email, it'll pretty much let you know. They'll be like, you'll designate where you're at. There's just a few areas, I can't remember off the top of my head, where we can't ship to, but as long as you're not within those, that shipping fee's baked in. You'll just get your free swag and be able to show it off. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the session and have a great weekend and holidays, especially if you're in the US and have Thanksgiving coming up. So, all right, we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.